Today, we're continuing our quest to bring back the world's first search engine called Archie. This once prolific service critical to users of the early internet has seemingly vanished without a trace. So join us as we go on an epic journey to find and resurrect the search engine that started it all. Archie is gone. This once prolific service of the internet has vanished. There are no Archie servers still online, and all that remains are ghostly remnants of a bygone era scattered across the web on forgotten web pages. And FTP itself is hanging on by a thread. Major web browsers no longer support the protocol, and once popular and thriving FTP sites are now shutting down. Which is a shame. We think such an important piece of internet history should be preserved. And so we've decided to try to run an Archie server ourselves. FTP was such a huge part of the 90s internet experience, and bringing Archie back seems like the perfect way to recapture that magic. But with Archie long since abandoned, we're going to have to figure out where to find the software. We first turned to Alan Emtage with our idea.
There is a copy supposedly at the Computer Museum in, where is it, Palo Alto or
Mountain View, someplace.
Mountain View, yeah. You might be able to try and get hold of them and see if they were given the tape of the last known tape of the source of Archie. But I never heard back from them on whether or not they were actually able to, extract
and get it off
extract
the tape.
Yeah.
The Computer History Museum's collection contains over 150,000 items, and luckily it is searchable through their website. Aside from an information superhighway training video from 1994, there is nothing relevant here to Archie. So it could be that the tape copy that Emtage provided was not recoverable. Finding information on the web about Archie's early days is difficult, since the Wayback Machine's earliest crawls are from 1996, several years after Archie's peak. We did find a record of Bunyip.com from 1999, just before the company closed its doors. From this page, we found that Archie's last version was 3.5, and it was selling for $6,000, a one-time fee for an unlimited license, but there was a discount for educational institutions. We also found a listing of Archie servers from 1997 and up through 1999, but none of these servers are still online. Their telnet interfaces have been shut down now for most likely well over a decade. So where does this leave us in our search? Well, there aren't going to be any easy answers. If we're going to find Archie, we're going to need to scour the corners of the web and the last remaining vestiges of the early internet. As you might imagine, a popular service like Archie spawned several other projects that aim to expand its access and make it easier to use. So we thought starting there might get us some leads of where to find Archie. The first we found was an Archie client for the Macintosh called Anarchy. It did away with the need to connect to Archie servers through a command line telnet client, and instead provided a graphical user interface along with a built-in FTP client for easy file downloads. We found a contact for the program's creator, Peter Lewis, and amazingly, he responded with an old Archie server listing, query code, as well as the transcript of an actual Archie session. But Lewis did not have a copy of Archie itself. We then found the creator of Archieplex, Martin Koester. Archieplex was a World Wide Web gateway to Archie servers that allowed users to query different Archie servers from a web browser, and the CGI form interface is still available to see, but with no Archie servers left, it doesn't actually work. But again, we hit a dead end, as Koester did not have a copy of Archie itself. We then turned to a Facebook group for internet old-timers, self-deprecatingly called the Internet Old Farts Club. If anyone knew where to find Archie, we thought they'd be here. Many in the group did remember the impact that Archie had, but again, we turned up empty-handed for an actual copy of Archie. After more weeks of searching, we were beginning to think this might be a wild goose chase for something that has simply been lost to time. But the fact is that little remains of the early internet. Even at its peak, there were under 100 Archie servers worldwide. And despite a thriving Ware scene during the 90s, The server software wouldn't have had much value to individual users, so it's unlikely to have ever been pirated. But still, it seems unbelievable that there's not a copy of Archie still somewhere out there. With all of our leads exhausted, our last-ditch effort was to try to find and contact the old administrators of Archie servers. But we had nothing to lose, so we started at the top of the list. This ended up being an arduous, weeks-long process of using the Wayback Machine to find clues as to who ran the Archie server, and then investigating to see if we could find their contact information. And this seems like a 1 in a million shot. What are the chances that any of these universities or institutions would still have a backup of Archie from over 2 decades ago? Amazingly, we ended up receiving a few replies. The IT help desk at Rutgers University here in the US ended up tracking down a former network administrator, Dan Reisman. He oversaw the Rutgers Archie server in the late 90s. During the period leading up to their Archie server shutting down, it had seen very little usage. It had been running on a SPARC Station 20 named Dogbert, which was finally decommissioned sometime in 1998. Prior to that, though, it had been the largest Archie server in the world. But striking out again, all the backups had been lost. And more weeks went by with no leads. But then, we received an email reply from a systems administrator at the University of Warsaw in Poland. Amazingly, their Archie server had been online with an old database until sometime in 2023 when it was decommissioned. But more importantly, they had discovered a backup of Archie files, and in them, the actual Archie source code and binaries. We found it! Against all odds, all that effort and time searching for Archie had finally paid off. These were almost definitely the last copies of Archie still in existence. Somehow, this relic of the past had been found, and with Emtage's permission, we set out to resurrect Archie. Well, here we are, possibly some of the last copies of Archie still in existence. The files we received consisted of 4 tarballs, a README, and a PostScript file. The README provided a list of files and their contents. There are backups of their server taken in 2011 and in 2021, as well as 2 tarballs of the source code, and one looks like it was a failed compile attempt. The PostScript file is a topology of Archie servers from 1995, showing how data gathering was distributed around the world. The first archive we took a look at was the source code archive. In the doc directory, we found an install doc which reveals that this is a beta of version 3.5, the final version of Archie. And in the manual directory, we found a complete LaTeX-based manual which we've converted to HTML using Pandoc, and we've published it in its entirety on the Serial Port website, with a link in the description below. From the docs, we discovered that one of the most important differences in the later versions of Archie was usage of something called the Prospero Virtual System. Prospero was created in the late 80s by Clifford Newman at the University of Southern California. It's a virtual file system, and this version of Archie uses a modified Prospero server and protocol to efficiently handle user queries, rather than the more resource-intensive grep string searches of the earlier days. And after some more exploring around in the other archive files, we may have hit pay dirt. We stumbled upon the dist directory in the university's backup from 2011. It looks like it contains the original distribution files for Archie. With these, we should be able to do a clean install. So let's get started on bringing Archie back into the 21st century. We first created a QEMU virtual machine to emulate SPARC hardware, and then installed Sun OS version 5.6, as this will serve as our platform for Archie. From there, we simply follow the instructions from the install doc. First and foremost, it starts with the user requirements on the system. It requires that 2 users are created, Archie and Arch user. But confusingly, both need to have the same user ID, which we can't seemingly do with the user add command. However, we did find an option of -O, which allows the user to be added with the same ID. Second, there needs to be a user group added called Archie, and both users need to belong to it. Once that's done, we can move on to the files required for installation. We see the base archive, install archive, as well as the specific SunOS 5.4 files that we need. We also have the unwrap, untar, and unrotate scripts as well. It looks like we simply run unwrap to begin the install process. That was fast, but we encountered an error of rel undefined variable. Editing the unwrap script, we can see that because we're using SunOS 5.6, there is a version mismatch. We hard code the rel variable and restart the install. And now we're ready to run make, except we don't have make installed. After quickly doing that, we can now successfully run make. The install is done, so we've reached our first goal, but now it's time to start the configuration. To get Archie configured, the documentation indicates we should first set something up called the pseudo domains database. This allows top-level domains like .uk or .au, for example, to be segmented into defined regions of the world to make it easier for users to search FTP sites that are close to them geographically. In our case, that won't matter, so we'll just go with the default specified in ardomains.cf. And then we run the ardomains program in the bin directory to create the database. Next, we need to add a line to inetd.conf for the AR server process. And after that, we add a line to etc services for AR server as well. We then need to modify the arretrieve.cf file to update the timestamps. We changed these from 1994, over 30 years ago, to the current date and time. And then the arupdate.cf file specifies which Archie servers we will do a data exchange with, which Alan Emtage, the creator of Archie, explained.
When there were multiple Archie servers, there was a whole system of exchanging between the Archie servers. So that was Archie 3.x, 3.0, when we sort of made it commercial and all that. And so the world was basically divided up into either by domain name or, well, always by domain name, but domain names could either be country-based or functional based. So you could have, an Archie server would be responsible for all the Korean sites, and it would collect all the data for the Korean sites. And then there was a process where it would package all of that up, and other Archie servers would connect to it and say, give me all that data. So it was sort of pre-digested data they would then have, and they could then distribute that to other Archie servers.
In our case, though, since this will be the only Archie server in the world, we'll just remove the bunyip.com entries for now. And we're finally ready to add an FTP site that we want to index. To do so, the docs recommend using the host manage program that's included with the installation. It's a curses-based program that uses Emacs control commands. Pressing tab brings up a menu, and we press 1 to add a new site. We're specifying hobs.serialport.org, our mirror of the OS2 Hobbs archive that was recently shut down. For the operating system, we get a choice of unknown, Unix BSD, VMS Standard, or Novell. Great. We'll just leave it on Unix BSD for now. We also need to add this to the Anon FTP catalog since this is an anonymous FTP site, as opposed to the web index or another custom catalog. We're then asked for a file name, but it's not clear what this is. Does this mean the file name of the database entry or a file name on the FTP site? We just enter the host name for now. We change the status to active and then save the entry by pressing Ctrl-U. We weren't sure what to do next to get the FTP site updated, so we consulted the cron tab entries from the University of Warsaw installation. We ran several of these commands with seemingly no activity, until we saw the archie.log file entries where it complained about an empty arupdate.cf, which is the file that we removed the bunyip.com lines from. Oops, we restored that and tried again. Running arretrieve with the -l option does produce something in archie.log. We see that there is a connection to localhost, but other than that, nothing else. So we then used Truss, a debugger for Sun OS, to see if we can get any more information from arretrieve. We do see that it is opening and creating files, and it does appear that it is updating the date and time in arretrieve.cf, as this file is now set to April 24th. We then find out we can use the -f option to specify a hostname to manually update. And finally, some progress. We have a header file written out to the disk, which is used by the next process to actually connect to the FTP site. And then we stumbled upon a sentence in the docs that states that we can use the -v flag on most commands to get a more verbose output. So we run AR control -r-v, which runs the retrieve anon FTP program. And oops, we can see that it's trying to download a file named hobs.zeroport.org. This is what the file name field in host manage must control. So going back into host manage, we can update the entry and remove that value. Running arretrieve again and then arcontrol, we have what looks like success. Archie connected to the FTP and retrieved a recursive listing. The next step in the process is to parse the output generated by arcontrol-r. So now we use the -p and -v options and encounter our next error. We're seeing more file not found errors. Manually running the command at AirDawn reveals the problem. We don't have Perl installed. After getting that installed, we figured out we have to rerun the indexing process from the beginning. And now we run arcontrol with -u to update the database. And once that is completed, we see now that there are string files indicating that we should have a searchable database now. Archie comes with several built-in clients, including a telnet client. We fire that one up and change our search type from exact to sub to allow partial matches from our query. But we get an ARDP timeout. It turns out that the Prospero server needs to be running for the telnet client to work. So after starting that and trying again, we now get a super helpful error message. We honestly weren't really sure where to turn next, so we decided to just give it another try. And lo and behold, it works! Our new Archie server is now fully up and running with a searchable database. We can even use remote clients to query the server. And after indexing a few more FTP sites, we've got plenty of data to be able to search. And finally, we can say that Archie is back. We've achieved our goal of bringing Archie back. But Archie was meant for internet users, and that's where you come in. We've opened our Archie service to the public at archie.zeroport.org. The interface is based on Archieplex, the web gateway we talked about earlier. And we were surprised to see that Archie could actually be somewhat useful in the modern day. The listings are hyperlinked, so if you have an FTP client set up for your browser, it enables pretty quick and easy file downloads without needing to wade through a bunch of web pages to find what you're looking for. And with Archie now up and running for the 21st century, our journey is now complete. When we started this project, we had no idea if we were actually going to be able to find Archie. So we owe everyone who helped us out along the way a huge thank you. and especially to Mike Schwartz and Alan Emtage, of course. And thank you for coming along with us, and we'll see you next time.